Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Billy Sewer, and I am a traditionalist Catholic. Welcome to my channel. I took a break a while from making and posting videos because I wanted to focus on my duties of my state in life, get back down to basics, and in the course of that, I've been doing some reading. So now I'm a little bit more interested. So now I've got some thoughts going, and that led me to considering to create and post new videos again. So here's here's a little bit of an update. So basically, one of the Nietzsche once wrote, and I'm paraphrasing, that with the loss of faith in God, Christian morality fades and eventually withers away. And I think, and he was describing the 19th century European liberal democracy. And now that we're in the 21st century, it's only gotten worse since Nietzsche had wrote that. It wrote that in his book, The Twilight of the Idols. So, and flowing from follows from that is I was watching Dr. Taylor Marshall's video, or live stream. Pardon me. I'm sorry, live stream. His take on Cardinal McElroy being named to the Archbishopric of Washington, D.C. He's going to be basically the point man with the Apostolic Nuncio, and then, well, he'd be dealing with President Trump, and also he'd be a point man in the American episcopacy, bring it more synodal. So we're in for a time. And following from that, Dr. Marshall had made a very interesting point. As laymen, I assume that the majority of my viewers are going to be laymen, and if there are any clerics, awesome, great. Let's see. Hopefully my words help any potential viewers that are clerics. That is lay folk. You, me, anybody else in the pews, right? That we do not have any powers of governance or jurisdiction in the church as laymen. So we can't stride through the halls of power in chanceries and say no to this, no to that. We make things happen. That's not our role. We're in the listening church. We're taught. We believe and we're taught the faith. Now, in the absence of pastors that don't speak with the voice of Christ, we discern amongst our pastors, bishops, archbishops, cardinals, the like, for the voice of Christ, and we listen for and follow the voice of Christ. So there's that. And our job as lay people is we simply keep the faith. We grow in sanctity. We read the Bible, read the Catechism, read books by saints, of saints, by saints. Like my personal go-tos is The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis and The Spiritual Exercises by Saint Ignatius de Loyola. And the more I read, the more I get into traditional Jesuit spirituality, before the rise of modernism amongst the Jesuits. So whenever I'm speaking traditional Jesuit spirituality, I'm talking about like the OGs, like Saint Ignatius de Loyola himself, Saint Peter Faber, Saint Francis Xavier, like I said, the OGs. And that we should grow in sanctity. And when looking at this activism in our time, this frenzied activism of our times. You gotta go do this. Gotta vote. You gotta do this, do that. And it's like they're vibrating with activist zeal. It's like, hold on, no, you got that reversed. In the book Soul of the Apostolate by Dom Chartard, which is Pope St. Pius X's bedside reading, that just to again paraphrase, Dom Chartard had written that without prayer, the works you do are empty. They're devoid. They're devoid of supernatural. They're devoid of supernatural content and fruit. They're just dead works. If you're not praying, you're not pursuing a life of sanctity. And I see a lot of that when it comes down to activists in the secular politics the secular politics. When I see left Catholics or progressives, whichever you want to call it, they're focused so much on doing this and that, these changes, these actions in the church. Where personally, for my take, the more I see like progressives like Cardinal McElroy or Cardinal Supich or Father James Martin S.J., I see pretty much progressive leftism that they're preaching, not the Catechism of the Catholic Church, not even, and let alone the Catechism of Trent or the Catechism of Pope St. Pius X. So, for my money, I listen to good bishops, cardinals like Bishop Schneider, Cardinal Burke. Some of you may have issues with Cardinal Burke. I get it. And then Cardinal Mueller. Lately, Cardinal Mueller's been saying some good things. I'm occasionally Archbishop Vigano says something good, but for the most part, I'm like, I'm worried of what he says because, I don't hate sedes, or sedevacantism just doesn't make any sense to me. So there's problems with that. So Pope Francis is the Pope until a future Pope says otherwise, if that happens. So again, returning to, and I'm sorry for the digression, to return to my point that Dr. Marshall had made, was that we grow in sanctity. We're lay people. We can't make decisions affecting the hierarchy. So we focus on growing in sanctity, right? And here's the interesting thing. Following from our growth in sanctity, because a good Catholic example is far more eloquent and powerful preaching than mere activism and angry posts online, or just getting into arguments that lead to nowhere with family members, people online, co-workers. A good Catholic example, growing in sanctity. You're growing in the faith. You're learning it. You're practicing it better and better and better. You're growing in prayer and a life of prayer and virtue, which is what the Catholic life is a life of prayer and virtue. It comes from the Book of Wisdom in the Old Testament. That following from that will flow Catholic action. And Catholic action basically is the action of Catholics in the public sphere. We're like soup kitchens, or basically, like all the spiritual and corporal works of mercy that our Lord Jesus Christ had commanded us to do. We move that into the public by our example, and by doing the spiritual and corporal works of mercy, that we bring Christ into the public sphere. Because yes, that our nations And unfortunately, many people in our society are either heretics or apostates, or they're outright unbelievers. They never were baptized, never were taught anything for various reasons. I could discuss that at length in a later video. That that they're not subject to the social kingship of Christ, and I believe that will be the only answer to our crisis in the West. Restore Christendom, basically. And that begins with evangelization. Because what the church traditionally does is that when she goes into into mission lands, a society that's pagan or whatever other religion may be, the first thing it does is it sets up a chapel or some sort of base operations where Father can set up and say Mass, set up a school, basically teaching the gospel, good Catholic education to the locals. Eventually converts are made, it grows, and eventually enough subjects of that nation that convert are baptized and are good faithful practicing Catholics. By that point, there's enough of them in that society to start affecting its political, economic, and cultural activities, because it's been said before, politics are downstream from culture. So we basically change the culture by evangelizing souls. Enough souls that are baptized practicing Catholics. Our Lady of Guadalupe over here, very good example of that. When she appeared, and millions of natives converted. Because prior to that, the Franciscans, they had a hard time evangelizing the faith amongst the natives. And then Our Lady appeared, and millions converted. It was a wonderfully crazy boom time. But back to my point, that we have to evangelize souls. It begins in ourselves. We evangelize our neighbors by the grace of God. They receive faith. They accept it. They seek baptism. They receive it. And they're good practicing Catholics. Enough numbers of these souls in a society will change that society. And then enough good, faithful, practicing Catholics in the corridors of power in that society, academia, the media, politics, and eventually we will have the Catholic confessional state, which is the ideal Catholic state. Now, it doesn't mean it has to be a king, it doesn't have to be this particular form of government. The church had said democracy is fine. The only forms of government that it condemns are those that violate are against the divine and natural law. Of course, like communism, socialism, those are definitely against the divine and natural law. So those are condemned. Socialism condemned by Pope Leo XIII in Rerum Novarum, and then by Pope Pius XI in 1937. I forget what the title of that was, that encyclical, but he condemned it. So we must sanctify ourselves, living a good life of prayer and virtue, and then by our example flows forth Catholic action into the public sphere, and eventually, with enough souls in a given state, we will have the social kingship of Christ restored. Now, that being said, two books I've been reading lately, is The Last Crusade by Warren E. Carroll, which is a history of the lead up in the first 6 months of the Spanish Civil War and part of Anthony Beevor's Battle for Spain. Now, I see in Anthony Beevor's Battle for Spain, when the Second Spanish Republic had been proclaimed in 1931, and King Alfonso went into voluntary exile, never returned. Unfortunately, it was a common story in the 20th century. In that time of the 20th century, liberals would proclaim a secular liberal republic, and their rightful king would leave. Terrible. Like Blessed Karl I of Austria, King Alfonso XIII of Spain. Well, from 1931 to 1936, the Second Spanish Republic, it was undergoing a tumultuous time, and it started off with a secular agenda to secularize Spanish society, removing the church from the educational system, removing crucifixes, other forms of left-wing liberal ideas, and to basically secularize Spanish society, to change it. At first, it was just liberals, just doing liberal things, and then there was a large communist and anarchist elements within the left wing of Spanish politics, and over time they grew more and more inflammatory in their rhetoric and their actions. And the Spanish right, concerned with that thing. Yes, there were fascists amongst the Spanish, the Falange, but they were a small element. Mainly, what you were seeing on the Spanish right was the army, the church, and the industrialists that were on the right. Probably also like small businessmen. And eventually, things had just gotten to the point in the Second Spanish Republic between the years of 31 to 36. We're just degrading into just belligerence between left and right, according to Beaver. And you could also see that. You could see that in how the left was just talking the way it was about the church. That it was getting to the point where nowadays what we would call what happened in those tumultuous 5 years culture war politics. You know, the two sides just adversarial, inflammatory rhetoric. You know, impassioned, inflammatory, impassioned, emotional, us versus them kind of rhetoric. The right concerned with the communist revolution in society. The left wanting to basically talking bad about the church and despoiling the church. Basically, like a lead up to what, because leftists were actively talking about seeing Spain as Russia was in 1917. Anybody who's read Russian history in World War I up into the Soviets, you can get an idea of what those leftists were looking at. And then eventually it led up to the elections of February 1936, and then basically, well, it was a leftist government and a popular front run by communists, and the right could see the writing on the wall. It may be liberals running the government, but they were concerned, and eventually, as course of events turned out, in the first 2 months of the Civil War, like July, August 1936, the communists took over the Spanish Republic. So it was a crusade to defend Catholic Spain against a communist revolution, funded, supplied, and controlled by the Soviet Union. In the Comintern, which is what, the third or fourth Communist International, which is directly under orders from Stalin in Moscow was organizing and supplying men in the international brigades to fight for communism in Spain against Catholics who were defending the church from persecution. They literally were killing bishops, priests, seminarians, monks, nuns, laywomen. So it was a crusade to defend Catholic Spain, and I saw a lot of wonderful, some good highlights that maybe in future episodes I want to go step by step, like the defense of the Alcazar under Colonel Moscato, the defense of the Salamanca barracks under Colonel Pania. Pope Pius the 11th speaking to Spanish refugees, 1936. The Bishop of Saragossa. It was like Saragossa. After the Alcazar was saved by Column of Franco's troops. And the stories of all these martyrs from Spain, some of which beatified by Pope Saint John Paul II in 1994. And like I said, I would like to go over that in future videos. So I think there's many good lessons that we could draw. So, and then finally, what I want to say to let you to lay it out is that with my channel, I think what I'm going to do is that my content would largely be about I, as a Catholic intellectual, speaking on the faith, and then from the basis of the Catholic faith, that I'd be speaking on matters of what's going on in the affairs in the church in our time, and the affairs of the state, of the secular world in our time. And as I'm still as my boys are still in high school at home, of course, there's my duties of state. So, so this channel would be like a side project that I can do. That I can do when the duties of my state of life permit, and then hopefully I can do, and hopefully I'd like to think I could do some good for my fellow Catholics, and because thinking on what has been said earlier, like Archbishop Sheen saying it'd be the lady to save the church. It'd be, but I think what we're dealing with, or I think the solution for our current crisis in the church would be that we lay faithful in the good priests, bishops, cardinals, and clerics, who are faithful to Christ, who speak that we can hear the voice of Christ in them. That we go to them and we receive the sacraments, we receive catechesis, we receive priestly care. We go to them for priestly care. That we as laity, we keep the faith, we grow in sanctity, we raise our kids to be good, and help our grandkids be good Catholic boys and girls. Help raise them into being good Catholic men and women. And from our children come vocations to the priesthood and the religious life. And I think what we're going to have to do currently, as it stands, that we'd have to direct our kids towards traditional seminaries like the FSSP, SSPX, ICKSP. I don't know enough about the IBP, so they look like they're good so far, but I'm expecting the majority of my audience is probably Americans, maybe Canadians, maybe. I'm expecting that's probably the majority of my viewers. But if you're from France, Germany, Mexico, hey, awesome, great. Then just let me know in the comments. Well, what do you think? What do y'all think of your traditional priests and religious communities in your neck of the woods? You know, that returning my point that we as lay faithful will keep the faith, grow in sanctity, raise our children in the faith, well formed, intellectually, morally, formed in prayer and virtue, and then that from there, from our children, we're becoming vocations to the priesthood and the religious life, and we steer them towards the traditional seminaries, priestly traditional seminaries, FSSP, SSPX, ICKSP, the other good trad groups, and traditional monastic orders, monks and nuns. And then basically that forms a self-feeding, a feedback system. And basically we just grow from there. That would just grow from there, and eventually and I think that'd be the basis of how the church is going to be restored. How we laity can do, as Archbishop Sheen said. Archbishop Sheen had said about that. They'll be the laity. They'll be the ones to save the church. That our bishops act like bishops, our priests act like priests, our religious act like religious, because we form them as children and then sending them to good seminaries. That we're ensuring that priests are being priests, bishops are being bishops, religious are being religious. So, let me know what please let me know what you think in the comments, and please subscribe, share, and if I have rambled a bit or went off on side tangents, please bear with me. I apologize. And just let me know, and let me know if you have any ideas of what content you'd like, what topics you'd like me to address, and then thereby I can go from there. Because I've already got some ideas on my own, like, say, speaking on the examples in the Last Crusade, maybe doing some commentary on a chapter of the Imitation of Christ, or commentary on passages or exercises from the spiritual exercises. I could also maybe, as things strike me, from like passages from the Mass, or from the Divine Office, and also maybe talking on bits of like books of like the Spiritual Life by Father Tanqueray, the Catechism of Trent, perhaps even the Summa Theologica, if some of you are theologically inclined beyond the catechism. So let me again, please let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, share, and thank you very much for listening. And thank you very much for those folks on Twitter who had encouraged me that had given me positive feedback about, yeah, please, I'd like to see more content. Thank you. Have a blessed day, and I'll see you in the next video.